Warning, this video contains opinions and my personal experiences with this game. There are facts that I mention in this game for the sake of getting to know what I'm working with, mainly when I talk in depth about the characters. You are tied to your own opinions and I'm going to respect that. If you like this game, I'm not going to stop you for liking this game because only you can change your opinions if you feel like it. I'm just expressing mine in this video. I'm viewing this from my own perspective and zero multiplayer will be included as I never got to experience this game with other people. So basically from a perspective of playing by yourself. This also includes spoilers from Rwby volumes 1 through 7, as I haven't watched volume 8 yet. Enjoy! The Rwby franchise is very polarizing. A Rooster Teeth original created by the late Monty Ohm, originally seeing mixed reviews but a bit more on the positive side, but also looking very unfinished at first. I don't want to say it was rushed because it really wasn't. The budget for the first 3 volumes were just enough to make 3 volumes of a show that might be a Rooster Teeth version of Sonic 06. Currently reigning at 8 volumes, Rwby has a lot of ups but also a lot of downs, the downs being a bit more visible than the ups, which is really unfortunate. A quick history lesson of Rwby before we get into the bitching. Rwby is an American animated series created by Monty Ohm of Rooster Teeth. If you've heard of a rooster and if you have a set of teeth, then you know about Rooster Cheddar Teeth. Set in the world of Remnant where aspiring huntsmen and huntresses aim to become warriors to fight against evil and protect the world from monsters known as Grimm and other evil figures that aim to rule the world. But don't worry, Rwby is not an anime. Think I spoke too soon there. The name Rwby is derived from the 4 main protagonists, Rwby, Weiss, Blake, and Yang, being Team Rwby. Pretty clever, Rooster Teeth, I see what you're doing. Lots of trailers were shown showing off the very limited budget, and a series with lots of potential of being a super memorable and beloved show. I mean, I was close to a certain degree. With this being a Rooster Teeth production exclusive, it only makes sense for the first episode of the first volume to be released on July 18th, 2013. Subsequent episodes that were released once a week for Rooster Teeth subscribers and then a week later making their way over to YouTube for everyone else to watch. Or that's another way to say that you're too embarrassed to say that you're paying money on the Rooster Teeth website to watch Rwby when it's literally on YouTube for free. And I had to go on Rooster Teeth to find something to mention and I saw Rwby and I had no idea they were on Rooster Teeth as a way of payment. The series eventually became a viral hit, but for the right and wrong reasons. I see it as a series that can grow and become something more. They start off small to see how things go. Kinda like tech demos, for consoles like Wii Sports for example. But honestly not as successful and a lot more criticized for a first season. But that didn't matter because volume 2 was eventually released a year later. Currently as I'm writing this video, we are at 8 complete volumes, so at least the series is going somewhere, but I'll save a more in-depth look at this for a different video. But this, you might want to keep a bottle of Pepto-Bismol next to you just in case your stomach decides to give up on you. This is Rwby Grimm Eclipse. Oh dear God, help me. Rwby Grimm Eclipse is a game that I feel like no one remembers that it actually released. Would you believe me if I said this game came out in 2016? Yeah, me neither. I found out about this game about 2-3 months ago from a Switch trailer showing off the definitive edition of this game. I want you to know, as a guy who really likes Rwby, I was so excited for this game. It came out as super forgettable, unfinished, and just super disappointing. Since Rwby blew up after the first volume, Rooster Teeth decided to bring the 4 iconic letters over to the video game scene. I feel bad for myself that I had to play this as a fan. I've been excited for games that exceeded expectations, met my expectations, or caused me to lose brain cells. I had so many ideas for what this game could have been. If they were gonna introduce a brand new, in-depth, non-canon story, bringing back old characters and introducing new characters, going through the open world of Remnant and a Genshin Impact type world with replay value, side missions to complete, tons of secrets to discover, like a Rwby Breath of the Wild. I've been told to never expect stuff to avoid disappointment, and this is what happens when you go against that saying. This is the type of game you'll get a free download code for in your box of grape nuts. It's a game that's just there for the sake of being a game. This was originally supposed to be a Rwby fan game, nothing too official, just a fan of Rwby creating a game for the community to soak up. How could they mess this up? This was also being made to celebrate the 11th anniversary of Rooster Teeth, so 10 years closer to being able to drink. It's unfortunate that Rooster Teeth was actually founded on April 1st, so I'm guessing that when the first trailer dropped, everyone was expecting it to be a prank, but no, this was the real deal. Who would have thought that this could have led to a really bad game? This game was originally designed only as a demo for a much bigger game. For this demo, it was based on the event of Rwby's first trailer, going for a hack and slash survival gameplay featuring Team Rwby facing escalating waves of Grimm attacks. It's one of those wave-based hack and slash warrior type games with an arcade type score base and a kill to death ratio. An employee at Kotaku was impressed by the combo system as it's very familiar to how every character fights in the original original series, which is a great idea. Also with the addition of unlockable skills as you make progress throughout the game. Later at RTX 2014, Rooster Teeth announced that they had hired Jordan Scott, the original designer for that Rwby demo that I was talking about, and officially picked up the game for development, greenlighting the project. An early demo of the game was available for consumers to play at the event, and the game's title was changed from Grimm Eclipse to Grimm Eclipse to match the spelling of the creatures in the show. I get it, Rooster Teeth, you're very funny and clever. I'm gonna be at your stand-up show at your headquarters in Austin, Texas next year. Relax. The CEO of Rooster Teeth, Matt Holmes, stated, and I quote, "Rwby is a natural choice for us to focus on for our first in-house produced video game. The fans can expect that we will bring the same level of originality and action, comedy, and design to the video game that has made the Rwby animated series such a hit." At least he was confident, because this is a dumpster fire of a game if I've ever seen one, and I've seen some bad games. To becoming an actual big thing to work on, I feel bad for Jordan, dude. Eventually, Rwby Grimm Eclipse released on July 5th, 2016 for Microsoft Windows, October 13th, 2016 on Mac, and January 17th, 2017 for Xbox One and PlayStation 4, and finally, for some odd reason, the Definitive Edition released May 13th, 2021 on Nintendo Switch. Why the hell was the original game not on Switch a few months after the Xbox One and PS4 releases? I have no idea. The game received mixed reviews from critics who faulted its gameplay. Well, my review was definitely one-sided, and I'm faulting everything I can possibly think of. Do you think someone originally gave this game a 7 out of 10 because they thought the skill tree was super customizable, praising the soundtrack? Let's just say that review didn't age a second, but it's time to be very disappointed in something that could have been more. Welcome to the beginning of the Eclipse. I hear it's very grim. Before we get into the meat and potatoes of why I don't like this game, let's talk about fake people real life people make money off of. Characters are what makes something memorable in media. Could you realistically watch Shark Tale without Will Smith? When it comes to the entire Rwby series and franchise, I feel like potential is Rooster Teeth's biggest fear. There are a ton of unique characters in the world of Remnant. It sucks that Rooster Teeth forgot about 97% of them for the original series after Volume 3, but it's even worse when they forget about 99% of them for the game. These characters can fit in a magic 8-ball, and won't you look at that, there are 8 playable characters. Last time I checked, I wasn't playing a modern Mario Party game. When the first version of the game came out, we only had the option of Team Rwby. I'll let you have this. It's only logical to have the main characters playable at the start, and then as time goes by, then we can add more characters. Well, they eventually did that, and let's just say there's a theme to follow. On October 13th, 2016, when the Mac version was released, there was DLC to play as Team Juniper, which consists of Jean Arc, Nora Valkyrie, Pyrrha Nikos, and Ren Lee. This is a good start. Bringing in new characters this soon shows off that they kinda care. On March 10th, 2017, as the Xbox One and PS4 versions have existed for 2 months, Rooster Teeth dropped some more DLC for the game in the form of cosmetic costumes, which is a nice feature, so we can play as Jean in a dress from that one Volume 2 episode. 2 sets for each team, the Beacon Academy uniforms and the Beacon dance outfits. Alright, good way to start off. Let's see what's next. October 18th, 2018. I'm sorry, what?
Hey yo, what the fuck?
Nearly a year and a half later, we got our next pieces of DLC content. I mean, don't get me wrong, it's better than not getting anything else, so let's see what's up. We get more costumes. Okay, time skip costumes and pajama costumes, because why not? Why weren't the time skip outfits released with the original game? Volume 4 was the beginning of the time skip that aired in 2016, and the time skip costumes came out in 2018, 8 days before the first volume of Volume 6 was aired, where at the time they were still using these designs. We haven't kicked off strong, but honestly I feel like when we started talking about Rwby Grimm Eclipse, that's when it started to fall, because we're just going down from here. Fast forward to a nice 3 years later when the Definitive Edition was released that came with the Atlas Arc outfits, which is where the series is currently at right now, which again makes sense, although Team Juniper didn't get their Atlas Arc outfits, nor did they get these power armor outfits that Team Rwby got. Also, they added power armor outfits. I got nothing. Anything else? It's 2022 and we still got nothing, so I'm guessing when it comes to development or extra content, it's over with this game. If there was a Rwby party game, I can see these 8 characters being the only playable characters available. I guess it makes sense to add characters that the original series is focused on developing, but we also have mainstays like Crow, who definitely could have made a playable appearance here. For God's sake, he made his debut in Volume 3, and unlike most characters, he wasn't shunned for the rest of the series, and is still relevant. They could have at least included added him as an extra character in DLC. But wait, 98% of the DLC was just costumes. The only good amount of extra content is the introduction of Team Juniper. I feel like they could have taken that chance to put in new characters like Oscar or Crow. It makes zero sense. It's like they thought the game was perfect where it was currently at, and instead of focusing on making the game better and more fun to play, they put it in the cosmetics that don't do anything. I'm not saying that they shouldn't have added these costumes, but it shouldn't have been the only thing they added other than Team Juniper. And this is only the first segment, so let's just hope I can make things a little bit more entertaining. Okay, so in order to complete game development and have the ability to play the game, you need a source of gameplay. Let's just say that repetition is this game's favorite word. Let's talk about the controls and movement first. I played the Nintendo Switch version of this game, but I'm guessing that no matter what console you play this on, the controls were most likely the same, unless you're playing on PC or Mac. Actually, now think about it, you probably can't even customize those controls. You would think so because you have like 15,000 different buttons that you can press. You know, you're only locked to certain buttons. Okay, so I know this is a review and I'm supposed to go in depth about whatever I'm talking about, but when it comes to the controls and gameplay, it's a little too much for me to go super deep into, so I'll just talk about the overall gameplay and mention parts of the controls that are actually important. The characters aren't that bad to control. For me personally, it feels nice. I feel like I'm going somewhere, especially when I'm air dashing all over the place like I'm a Sonic main that continuously uses the homing attack. Although you do fall super fast for no real reason, but that doesn't really make the movement worse, it's just really noticeable. No character in this game is faster or slower than others, so that really says something. Every character has some form of projectile, except for Yang to an extent because of her up close and personal brawler fighting style, and Jean, who actually doesn't have a projectile because he uses his shield to truck through enemies. Next up is your health, or known as in this game called aura. That's that little green bar right there. If you get hit by an enemy, your aura goes down, like most action-based games should do. Whenever you run out of aura, you stay alive for a few seconds while you hear a glitching sound effect with a translucent red border acting as a warning that you're going to die after a few hits. Although you can counter this by just running away and not getting hit for a few seconds, then your aura will replenish back to 100%. Press the bumper buttons at the same time and you'll get your ultimate move with a massive radius and very strong to boot. Although there are times where an enemy is within the radius, but the attack just doesn't connect, which is pretty annoying. No character is stronger or weaker than another, which isn't a bad thing because it allows you to play as whatever character you want, but that also doesn't mean that everyone is on the same level. I do believe there is a best and worst character in this game, but because of how similar everyone is when it comes to combat and button combinations and damage output, and also the fact that there's only 8 characters, really makes it close on who's the best character, and it can really switch at any moment. I personally played Weiss, Blake, Ren, and Pyrrha throughout most of this game. I beat the game with Weiss and I vowed to never fight that final boss again, but we'll get to that later. When it comes to straight up combat, it works and succeeds at what this game is meant to be. Everyone has attacks that call back to their animated counterparts, which is mandatory for a game like this if it has OG source material. Every character is unique in their own ways. Combat feels okay at best, but you can pull off some cool stuff. Every character may have different sets of moves that fit their character, which is charming, but they all require the same controls. You use the same combo controls and buttons for the same amount of damage every time. With every character, everyone has a triple YX combo, the quadruple YX midair combo. No one is more distinct than the other when it comes to combat other than the aesthetic. Like for example, Blake uses shadow clones in combat. Yang is more up close and personal. I think a good addition would be a beginner control setting and an advanced control setting as options. The beginner control setting would be for the beginners and would consist of what we have now, where everyone pretty much does their unique attacks, but they all control similarly with the same button inputs. The advanced control setting will be for players who want to branch out further and get a bit more complex. Every character has the same moveset, but you have to put in a unique button combination for certain attacks and combos, and every character would have their own unique button combinations to input for every attack. Kind of like combo attacks in Mortal Kombat. This will give a lot more depth to these characters and make them all fun to play in their own unique ways. I'm very curious as to what the budget was for in this game, because I know there are some gameplay mechanics that they could have improved on or just switched out certain parts of the gameplay with something more logical. But there is one very important aspect of these characters when it comes to their combat. In the world of Remnant, huntsmen and huntresses have a unique signature power that matches their fighting style. These are called a semblance. Semblance is a power exhibited by certain characters in Rwby. It is developed from a person's aura and typically helps in battle against Grimm. All semblances are different between people that can range from super strength, manipulating objects, to disorienting opponents, and everything in between. You think that they would develop into some sort of gameplay mechanic that's flashy and fun to look at and very powerful as an ultimate super move, but semblances in this game are nowhere to be seen. They aren't even mentioned through the very limited dialogue. You would think that the ultimate move would be their semblance, but no, it's just a random move that fits their character style, or it's a move from the animated series that's shown during fight scenes, but those moves could be in their normal combat moveset as a bigger combination and replace their semblances as their ultimate move. Does combat work? Yes, it does, but that doesn't mean it's good or fun. It's super boring because of the wave style of combat you're forced upon. There are only 2 different types of enemies we have to fight against, and there is barely any variety here. It's just a pack of Grimm in 5 or 6 different sizes with their own health and attacks. When you get to the 7th chapter for this game's excuse of a campaign, we get introduced to robot enemies. A whopping 2 different types of robots. A red robot that's annoying to deal with. Its hitboxes are stupid big and powerful, man. It's so annoying. Next is a white robot that's a ranged menace with a machine gun and grenades. Not as annoying as the red Darth Maul bastards, as they're pretty easy to avoid if you focus on others. I hate all the enemies. We don't get to fight any actual villains in this game. Why? Finally, as we wrap up the gameplay segment, let's talk about something that could have made this tolerable: the level system and the skill tree. So this is a bit weird. The level system in Grimm Eclipse is only useful for one single use in this game. You can find small white magic lights that give you a little bit of XP. When you level up, you earn a skill point for the skill tree, and it goes on until you reach level 10. By then, you should have 10 skill points to do whatever you want with on the skill tree. Speaking of, the skill tree is the only way of making you feel stronger when you make progress and fight enemies with more HP, and they can prove to be useful. The skill tree is the only useful part of this level system. But in order to use your skill points, you need to unlock certain aspects of this skill tree, like beating a certain amount of enemies or a specific move. It's not fun, but at least it doesn't make fighting unbearable. The type of upgrades you can gain in this includes upgrading your ultimate, team, and heavy attacks, and more general pieces such as more HP, being able to recover your HP faster. I would much rather have them unlocked by pure progress in the game, and when every chapter ends, you gain 1 skill point and you can spend it on whatever you have unlocked, and by the end of the game, you'll have unlocked everything and you can do whatever you want. I don't like that you're limited to just 10 skill points. I wish you could have every available upgrade equipped instead of having to pick between what you want to use. I've done this a lot by having to pick between upgrades that I knew would help me finish this game quicker. It's super annoying, but at least it helps you in some extent. The leveling process is useless and definitely shouldn't have been implemented because you don't get any stats that go up every time you level up. You have to rely on the skills you acquired from the skill tree, and that's pretty much required. Although you can beat this game without any of these assets, but come on, why would you suffer more than you have to? Also, while you're exploring, you can find these chest type artifacts, and they give you 100 XP, and I think there are about 2 to 4 per chapter. That's the only thing you get for exploring the game. Extra XP. You don't get anything else. So that's all the gameplay that I want to talk about. There's a possibility I missed a few things, but these were the major ones I had to mention. But I'll save everything else that I want to talk about for later in the video. Let's review these characters and how they play. Combat in these type of games are very important because you have to make progress somehow without glitching your way to the end. So let's go in depth about every character and their movesets and how they differ from everyone else. I'll be reviewing them in combat and what makes them unique. Alright, let's start off with Ren, 4th member of Team Juniper, quiet, mellow, and mature former student of Beacon Academy. He wields dual automatic pistols with blades attached to them. Even though semblances are more than irrelevant in this game, I still want to mention them as they are essential in Rwby combat. Ren's semblance is Tranquility, which aids him in avoiding detection by Grimm. He can extend the effect of his semblance to other people, as well as vehicles containing other people as well. Like I said, semblances in this game are more desaturated than a monochrome house. He was originally voiced by the late great Monty Ohm for the first 2 volumes, but after his passing, his brother Neith Ohm took his place, and he is doing a great job for this character. Not only that, but he took the role and voiced him in this game. He has a really cool ultimate as he teleports to one enemy and bitch slaps them. When it comes to how his attacks look when you know what you're doing, doing. It's pretty cool to look at, and you can feel the attacks with a pretty decent sound design. His attacks are fast, he applies pressure to the enemy, and his gun attacks are a bit weird. The first two attacks are fine, but the third is not really that reliable because the hitboxes on the bullets are super small, and there's a small chance they'll hit a Grimm that's further away. You would have to be making out with the damn thing in order to connect. The idea of scattering bullets is novel and could work really well, but in the final game you'll be fine not using it at all. Next up we have Rwby, a very jubilant high energy girl who loves combat. She carries Meng Hill, and I definitely butchered that, a warhammer that can be converted into a goddamn grenade launcher. Her semblance, high voltage, is a production and manipulation of electricity, allowing her to channel the energy of her muscles and gain superhuman strength. Jesus. Nora is very talkative and hyperactive, the most positive member of Team Juniper. Her attacks may feel a little slower, but they bring immense power. She has a super powerful spin attack when you do her triple YX combination. It can hit multiple enemies, and if you land all the hits on one enemy, it'll either kill them or do tons of damage. She relies on her raw strength in battle and enjoys every second of it. Kinda reminds me of Haru from Persona 5. I mean, an axe is very similar to a hammer, and they both wield grenade launchers. She's pretty fun to play with, and you feel pretty satisfied when you destroy your enemies with raw strength. No need for magic, super speed, or a magical trumpet. That character is really cool. Next up, we have the leader of Team Juniper, Jean Arc. He's a character within the animated series that has gone through a ton within the volumes. Lots of character development, and he's just a great guy. He gives me the vibes of a knight in training when you look at his arsenal. A sword and shield that's an heirloom formerly belonging to his great-great-grandfather. He may be the most basic character, but it doesn't make him any less effective in combat. His semblance aura amp allows him to amplify his aura or that of two others, and he can quickly recharge his aura even when broken. In game, he does come off as basic and simple, but in the world of Remnant, you don't need to be a whole mage in order to kill someone. Jean takes his simplicity and works with it to the best of his abilities, and evolves as a huntsman and as a person. He's clumsy at times, but he means well in the end. He has fast and pretty powerful sword attacks, and his ultimate allows him to do 50% more damage to enemies for a very small amount of time. Instead of a projectile, he runs toward the enemy's shield first, and if you hold the right trigger, you can keep hitting them with his shield, and because its frame data is so fast, you can literally sit there and keep hitting them. It's insane. There will be times where he'll target another enemy, but that doesn't matter because it's pretty funny at how dumb this is. It may do very little damage, but that means you're not taking any damage anytime soon. Although I think this is how it actually works. The further away you are from your opponent when you're dashing towards them, the more damage it does, and it gets lower the closer you are. That's just a guess. I really don't know, but that's what I came up with when I was getting this footage. When it comes to who I played the first time around, he was a very underrated character, and I was mainly focused on Team Rwby and Pyrrha. Honestly, I underestimated him, as he's pretty fun to play with in this game, like everyone else. You get the satisfaction of fast sword swings and the multiple hits you can inflict on the enemy. Love his character development in the show, and if this game were something bigger, he would be a much better character than he already is. The last member left on Team Juniper is Pyrrha, one of my favorite characters in the series for what she represents and her character overall. Her design makes me think that she could be a character in Hercules. I would like to think that Pyrrha has suffered the most within the series, not being able to make friends because of her high reputation of being the definition of a perfect student, her suffering through the last few episodes of Volume 3, which led to her death at the hands of Cinder, which broke my heart. That was terrible. This game even reminds us that she's dead because when you go to Team Juniper and go to their time skip outfits, you see Pyrrha, eyes closed and desolate as she's no longer there. God. At least they were able to get her in the game, but this decision is understandable because we never got a time skip design. She has a positive attitude and is always trying to make her team better and encourage them with positive remarks. That's all I'm gonna say about her in the series. Let's talk about her in the game. She wielded Milo or Milo, one of the two. It's spelled like this, alright? A javelin that can transform into a rifle or a Zepho's sword. Again, I'm butchering these. And her shield called Akuo, again, butcher. I'm just gonna go with that, alright? If I mess it up, you can't do anything about it. Her semblance is polarity, which is the ability to manipulate objects with magnetism. She can do pretty much everything, and she's super balanced with her variety of attacks and defense. She can do it all. Her attacks are fast, and she can space out the enemy with her rifle, and she has a lot of range with her light magic. And her ultimate is pretty good as it damages all enemies within the massive radius. She's the jack of all trades character in this game, you know? I wish they didn't kill her off for the sake of character development, but it might have been the best way to make Jean on a more likable character in upcoming volumes, and I believe it worked well at the cost of a beloved character. Alright, well let's move on to Team Rwby, and let's start off with Yang Xiaolong, the half-sister of Ruby Rose. A spunky tomboy with terrible puns that involve her name. She's charming, cares about her team, has an optimistic attitude, but she also has slight anger issues. But for reasons that are 100% justified. She wields 2 shotgun gauntlets called Amber Celica. A pretty cool idea for a melee weapon, as she likes to get up close and personal and brawl it out, with every punch includes a shot from her gauntlets. During the fall of Beacon, Yang loses her right arm during battle in Volume 3. Her replacement is a bionic arm installed with a shotgun mechanism at the wrist. This doesn't change her gameplay if you choose the time skip or Atlas Arc outfits, but it's a nice touch instead of just giving her both of her arms and all her outfits, which honestly she doesn't deserve. Her semblance, Burn, works on a recoil-based system. Whenever Yang takes a hit, her strength, toughness, and striking power rises in proportion to her injuries. Her hair glows and eye color change are caused by excess energy from the buildup, which also results in Yang often acting very hot-headed in battle, so pretty much she goes Super Saiyan for a bit. She's very strong, her attacks come out pretty fast, she has really good ranges with specific attacks, but you are pretty much required to be really close to the enemy to do damage. Yeah, she does have a projectile, but it's the last attack when you hold down the shoot button. You still have to be a little close to the enemy in order to land those first 2 attacks to do some credible damage, but she doesn't have to rely on it as much as the rest of Team Rwby because of her fighting style. I feel like the reason why Yang has the semblance she has is because she woke up one day and chose violence and immediately thought she was the chosen one. What do you think Team Rwby would be if the name looked like this? At first, Blake Belladonna is a very mysterious being. She usually keeps herself away from others and keeps herself to her books. She's a demi-human, but in the world of Rwby, they're called Faunus. She's half human and half cat. It makes sense taking a look at her mannerisms at the beginning of Rwby and her fighting style. She uses shadow, earth, and fire clones. She's like a setup character in a fighting game. She relies on them to confuse her enemies. She has a really unique fighting style, and I really like playing as her, and she's probably one of the most fun characters in the entire game in my opinion. Blake's weapon is the Gamble Shroud, a variant ballistic chain scythe hybrid with a sharpened sheath that has a pistol in the hilt, which is also attached to a long ribbon, adding more to the uniqueness of her combat style. Blake uses her blade and sheath in attacking combinations while also using the momentum of the blade anchored to an object to maneuver herself with the ribbon. She's very agile and one of the faster characters. Her semblance Shadow allows her to create a hollow clone of herself that functions as an after-image decoy while she moves in a different direction. A very cool way of combat, fun to watch in the series and very fun to play as. During the first 3 volumes, she's concealed her Faunus identity by hiding her cat ears under a black bow, as she felt she would have experienced discrimination like other Faunus, which makes sense. Anyway, going into the game, she has quick attacks, and whenever you land an attack that has to do with her shadow clones, you can definitely feel as she's without a doubt the most flexible character in the game. When she lets out a shadow clone, she's not stuck in an animation until its attack is over. She can still move even while her shadow clone is in the attack animation, which gives her the ability to focus on other enemies, which is a big plus. I believe because of the events of volumes 4 through 6 made Blake a fan favorite amongst Rwby fans for all the right reasons. Next up, we have our main character, the leader of Team Rwby, Ruby Rose. She's a special case in the world of Remnant. She uses the Crescent Rose Scythe as both a melee weapon, it can also turn into a gun.
There, I said, are you happy?
Her semblance is called Petal Burst, which enables her to transform into a fast burst of rose petals. Initially, it was thought that Ruby's ability was primarily speed, enabling her to run faster than the human eye can catch and change directions in midair. I mean, yeah, she's really fast and mobile, because in the series, she is really fast and her semblance makes her even faster to keep up with. She's had a questionable past with the mysterious death of her mother and trying to figure out what happened. Not only that, but she has silver eyes, which is super rare, which dubs her as a silver-eyed warrior. Silver-eyed warriors are an ancient lineage of legendary warriors who possess special abilities through the usage of their eyes. Their power destroys Grimm and is believed to originate from the god of light. The series only mentions this a good number of times, and in volume 6 they meet another silver-eyed warrior by the name of Maria Calavera. Now, going into the game, it's not mentioned that she has those special powers. There isn't a move that at least hints at it. There isn't a cutscene where she has to rely on it. Just like semblances, Rwby being a silver-eyed warrior is super irrelevant. Being the main character, you would think you would put some time into explaining the concept a bit more. but no. She has a really cool ground combo that transitions into an air combo, but honestly now I think about it, she's not the only character that has that, as Blake has that, Weiss has that, Yang has that. Pretty much you can do it with everybody, so she's not really that special anymore now I think about it. You would also think as the main character she would get special treatment, but nope. At least she has a positive attitude and has an addiction for any type of weapon, which is charming. Finally, our last character and my personal best girl of the show, Weiss Schnee. While inheriting her family's white hair and blue eyes, Weiss gained a noticeable scar over her left eye, finding an armagigas from an attack she suffered in her white trailer before the first volume was aired. Weiss uses a dust revolver slash rapier named this. I'm not even gonna try to pronounce that. Her main affinity is ice, but she can use any other type of elemental magic. Her semblance is unique in the way that is a hereditary trait in her family. Her ability consists of glyphs that have a variety of push and pull effects. The ability to summon previously defeated foes with the armor Gigas as her primary summon. Weiss's design alludes to Snow White, as her full name, Weiss Schnee, is German for white snow. When it comes to her Grimm Eclipse appearance, she's very straightforward as she only uses ice magic, has fast normal attacks, a really good projectile that can keep her really far away from her opponent, but it's not as good as Rwby or Blake's because theirs are automatic while Weiss takes a little bit of time to travel, and one of her upgrades regarding her ranged attack can allow her to freeze her enemies, which is one of the best mechanics in this game. She has 3 different attacks that can freeze enemies. One is a part of her moveset from the get-go, and the other 2 you have to unlock through upgrades. She's the only character that can freeze enemies, and it gives her a major advantage as she can chain them to keep them frozen until they die. It's broken and overpowered, but it makes suffering through this game very bearable. It's also pretty funny. I mean, look at this. I froze this enemy and it's literally stuck in mid-air above the ice that it's supposed to be frozen in. In my opinion, this makes her the best character because she can freeze an enemy, they stay frozen for 5 seconds, and that feels like a very long time when you're focusing on multiple enemies. Like I said, you can chain the freeze ability for much longer if you use the move multiple times, and it's just a beautiful sight to see, and you don't have to be technical with it, you just have to do it before they break out of the ice. She's called the Ice Queen for a reason, and I'm guessing hardcore Disney fans tried to sue Rooster Teeth because no one else can be like Elsa. And that's it for the characters. It's unfortunate that we didn't get any more characters, but this brings a few positives to this game. All 8 characters are fun to play to some extent. I have my personal favorites, but because the gameplay is so repetitive, it really didn't matter who I played. It makes things boring as nothing changes throughout the chapters. It sucks that this is what I had to work with. So let's move on to the chapters. Oh no. So the campaign mode in this game features chapters. I'm guessing when it comes to the actual story, something's not right as there are more Grimm attacks than usual, and we have to figure out what's going on. So we'll talk about these chapters separately in order and see what they bring to the table. Chapter 1, Boots on the Ground. The first chapter of this game gives us the Fields of Remnant, and I feel like this is where we would get a tutorial of how this game plays, but we're left to experiment with combinations, which can be a good thing and a bad thing. It can be really good because people don't really like tutorials, but I feel like they're mandatory so we know what we're working with when it comes to these characters and how they play. But it's also a bad thing because it's gonna cause a lot of unprecedented deaths. I mean, yeah, we can take a look at the controls before we dive in, but I think it's better to get an action-based demo of sorts, and then afterwards we can move on once we learn about these combos. When I first started playing, I didn't even know we could combine a heavy attack after some normal attacks. Like what? Now it's mainly the only way of attacking in combat. The length is very short as we fight 4 different waves of Grimm, and they go by pretty fast, and at the end we have to keep this control center from shutting down by Grimm attacks. It's really easy and what I would expect from a first level, but the overall environment is super bland and boring. I feel like I could go to the Sahara Desert and find more interesting things. Chapter 2, Technical Difficulties. This name must have been what's been going on at Rooster Teeth when making this game. Here we have lots of structures, Elephant Grimm, and that's it. This time the waves of Grimm are in the middle of the chapter, and then after a few minutes you have to go through a second wave section, which makes things more annoying than they should be. They didn't have to add another wave section for the sake of keeping up a lack of variety. According to the description, Beacon Security Network is down. Find out what's causing the interference. I'm not even sure if they can even keep up with their own narrative because the second Grimm battle, which is the first wave section, we first have to activate this gear so we can get across to the other side. We can't just sit there and be bored, so Grimm are gonna attack us. We kill them, and then afterwards the bridge is ready and we keep going to the next wave of Grimm, and after that we come across another control center like we did the first chapter. We have to protect it from getting destroyed again, and that's it. I'm guessing this kind of does have something to do with the security system, but there's only Grimm, and those are super common in Remnant. Maybe it's so Grimm doesn't get into the school and start eating people like rabid animals, but guess what? They don't even mention Beacon Academy either. Chapter 3, The Collapse. So I would like to say when it comes to the environment transitions throughout the game, this one is very blunt as we go from this to this. That escalated very quickly. The lack of cutscenes or any context really makes me question, how the hell did we get here? What was the cause of this sudden change of environment? Was there an explosion? Did someone take over the world or something? We go from everything being intact with Grimm attacks, but nothing too threatening, and a few minutes later, the landfill becomes too much and pollution is the only way of living. This looks like if you drink clean water, you would die immediately. So here we're introduced to bear-type Grimm. All you have to do is get a safe distance away from them and just camp by spamming your projectile. Oh yeah, that's doing another wave section. I'm starting to detect a theme here with this game other than being bad. Gameplay wise, nothing really changes. We go up against Grimm and then we get into the wave section where they kick it up a notch, 5 waves of Grimm this time. Ooh. It's placed right in the middle of the chapter and we have to fight bears and a giant bear who is tortured to take down because of how much health he has and that his attacks can nearly one-shot you. It's super annoying, but afterwards an earthquake happens and we end up below the surface. Speaking of, Chapter 4, Below the Surface. This is where things start to get even more annoying than they have to be. The developers really like making us suffer. So after the events of the last chapter, we end up in the remains of the explosion and we have to explore this terrible looking area that looks as if a bomb was set in an underground railroad. It is very depressing down here. This cursed area brings with it these toxic like Grimm that can explode whenever they feel like it, and they do a ton of damage. Again, they can nearly one-shot you. I really hope Britney Spears wasn't any type of inspiration with this game. Later on, we get to one of the worst parts of this game, this stupid bomb that you have to escort your way through this entire mine shaft that's also filled to the brim with tons of different types of Grimm. Not only that, but you're on a damn timer and it requires fuel in order for it to move forward. It's not that bad, but it doesn't mean I enjoyed it. I died twice here because I just ran out of time. And also there are dust stations spread out all over the place. You can't just go to one dust station. No, you have to go to a specific dust station in order to get the dust and then put it on the cart so it can move forward. Why? And you're being chased by a ton of Grimm. When it comes to this chapter, I feel like the difficulty doesn't matter, especially during this section. Even on normal difficulty, that's a lot of Grimm. I'm not even gonna try to play this on the hardest difficulty. Let's just move on. Chapter 5, Right on Track. If this chapter name means anything, it means that I don't have to play this game anymore because I'm right on track with getting done with this video. This part of Remnant is probably the best looking place among the other locations in this game. It's the most distinct. The colors blend in really nicely with each other and it's really nice to look at. This is also a pretty cool concept as well. We spawn in this big space and we have to find ancient keys to open up different paths and we have to go through them and defeat Grimm. We come back to this main area 3 times so we continue making progress as we go through these different pathways. I think design and gameplay wise, this is the most unique chapter. The visuals are nice. I like the concept of using keys to open up different pathways to make progress, but this is countered by the Grimm battles as it doesn't change at all and there is this random toxic Grimm for no reason other than just to get the characters to say something about it. Although this is without a doubt my favorite chapter in this game. Chapter 6, End of the Line. This is like a continuation of the previous chapter where we have to find keys, but instead we have to find a specific key because we're following a certain path as we go through certain paths first. Then after we get the final key and we come across this weird underground area and we see a Grimm that's caged up and that makes me wonder what's going on here. There does seem to be a narrative, but it would have been better if there were other Grimm in those cages to fill it out, but nope, just one. It doesn't do anything, nor does it foreshadow anything within the narrative. We fight the normal waves and we need to start getting used to, and after we boarded a ship full of containers and Professor Rwby tells us not to get spotted. How are we gonna get spotted if there is no security system to be intimidated by? Based on dialogue Rwby gives out once we board the ship, we weren't originally supposed to board the ship just to investigate what's going on with these containers and where its next location is. But we find out in the next chapter. Chapter 7, The Island of Dr. Merlot. So, here we are on an island of an evil mad scientist named Dr. Merlot. Don't worry, we'll get into his character later. I hate this place. This is the first level of the 4 levels of hell. And of course, is near the end of the game. This is also where we are introduced to robot enemies, with the first being red sector wannabes with swords. We only see them once in the very beginning when we fight 2, which is fine with me because I hate these bastards. We lose connection with our professors and we have to activate stuff in order to be able to hear them clearly with no static. We do our thing and we eventually meet our main antagonist, Dr. Merlot, a scientist who believes that Grimm are more than humanity and that they are a superior species because they're fascinating biology, raw, unbridled aggression, and lack of sentience. You're gonna look at this and tell me this is the evolution of humanity, where there won't be any humanity left other than this man? If you look like a knockoff Dr. Brown with a robotic eye, you must have been special as a kid. Chapter 8, A Grimm Discovery. I'm not laughing. Things went from 50 to 100 earlier, but this time it went from 52 to 100, so at least it's consistent to an extent. This is where the robot enemies start to take over as our main enemies in this game in the worst ways possible. I feel like this is when the chapters start to drag on with unnecessary fighting, making the robots a lot more troublesome to fight. Going into combat with them makes me feel monochrome, but also makes me feel like I'm about to blind someone with how bright my colors are. That's not a good thing. I shouldn't be going back and forth with complete anger and just boredom. My first time fighting these guys, I was so shocked that they can start so far away and give me the ability to think that I can breathe, and then the next thing you know, they're slicing and dicing my ass into oblivion. They jump so far into my hitbox that they can start as far away as they want and still be able to hit me, and when I react, it's already too late, and I'm busy running for my life to get my health back and wasting more time on this game. You know what? Here's what I'm gonna do. I'm about to order a Popeye's biscuit with no drink and snort crack cocaine at the same time. Chapter 9, The Grand Tour. Alright, we're almost done. Third level of hell. The grand tour of Dr. Merlot's lab. The description says, an invitation to Dr. Merlot's laboratory results in an unexpected twist. Would you believe me if I said that's false advertising? We've seen everything that this chapter already shows. Exploding Grimm, robots, and that's it. All we have is a different location. And this is the final location in the game. We've done everything there is to do. This is the worst tour of my life. -2 out of 10, never coming back. And finally, chapter 10, the final exam. Here we are, the 4th and final level of hell. Honestly, clever name for a last chapter of the game. We go through the laboratory, avoid traps, having to destroy capsules that amount to nothing, but I'm guessing that has to do with Grimm and making them the gods of the world. This is without a doubt the worst, but also one of the best parts of this game. We go through everything we've gone through for the 10th time with an actual boss fight. This is the only boss fight in this game, and oh my god, this is one of the worst boss fights I've ever fought in my life. I'm gonna go more in depth on it later. Let's just say it took me 6 tries to finally beat this thing once, and after that I started writing this video. I'm 50 pages into this script and I'm not done yet. The chapters are just here to give the idea of having a story mode or some type of visual narrative. There aren't any cutscenes, barely any dialogue that have anything to do with what's going on. But let's move on before we get into what I really want to talk about. In my opinion, Rwby music is absolutely amazing, one of the best parts of the entire franchise. Some of my favorite music because every song means something when it comes to this series. Jeff Williams as the main composer and his daughter Casey Lee Williams as the main vocalist for the majority of the OST are geniuses. Who better to create amazing art with music than father and daughter? The perfect combination. I personally recommend watching the series and listening to the music. The music will make you cry because it's so good, in my opinion, obviously. Each member of Team Rwby has their own themes that have been played in their trailers and they fit their characters perfectly, and it gets better as the volumes go on and they go through their personal arcs. The music in this game, it's very inconsistent. First thing you're listening to, a random instrumental, to listening to nothing, then you're listening to the Red Like Roses 2 instrumental at the worst time. There isn't a battle theme, none of the locations have their own songs, the main music is interesting. There are times in this game where it feels like the music doesn't exist until you actually start paying attention and hear the music. There are barely any changes to the music, no variety, and it's very dry and makes my ears want to listen to The Big Day. The only good song is the credit song. That's like saying the only good song in an album is the last song, and for some albums, that's what people actually think. If I told myself 5 years ago that I would listen to After Hours and that the only song I'm gonna like would be Until I Bleed Out and that I wouldn't like everything else, I would punch myself in the balls like Johnny Cage does to everyone else. After Hours is an amazing album. I mean, come on, the reason why they went with this really inconsistent and really bad format for music is because they needed to add some type of music, and the only memorable song is an instrumental of one of the best songs in the entire series. Music is important in media. This game makes music feel like an option that we can't choose from. So from what I've gathered the past 2 weeks writing this video, this was mainly supposed to be a game for multiplayer. Okay, that's fair. A hack and slash game that's multiplayer based. You can still play it by yourself, but it's a different experience when playing with other people. I wouldn't know because I tried. I didn't get anyone. Probably because I don't know how to get people online to play with me. But I really don't know how to get it working like online, because I really doubt my friends are gonna want to play this locally with me. So I'll never find out what it's like until I get lucky. From what I've read, the game isn't as bad when played with multiple people, and it also depends on the difficulty. Speaking of, I literally just added this into the script because it really does stand out and does mean something. I have to talk about it. The difficulty is part of what makes a game good or bad. There are 4 difficulties in this game: normal, hard, legendary, and eclipse, in said order. I personally played on normal because I didn't know what I was in for, and I kept it up until I finally beat the game. And I don't know what that final boss looks like with the eclipse difficulty, and I don't want to know. I tried it once on the first chapter, and wow, honestly, it is pretty difficult. The thing is, it's not that the Grimm gets stronger, it's just a bigger number of Grimm. It does make it difficult when there are 30 Grimm attacking you at once. It is difficult, and that is not a bad thing. It could make for some funny rage content. I might just do something funny with this game in the future on the Eclipse difficulty, but we'll see. Alright, it's time. I'm going to start naming off things I personally do not like about this game. Now, I want you to know that if you've made it this far, I've been voicing my opinions as I talk about the topics that I wanted to talk about, but this is where opinions are going to flood the land as if a hurricane is paying a visit. These are things about this game that I personally do not like. If you've played this game and like what I don't like, that's cool. I'm glad that you enjoy it. I just don't like it personally. I'm not trying to make people hate this game as much as I do. I'm just voicing my opinions as to why I don't like it, and also because I want to talk about it. The review section is over. I voiced everything that this game has to offer. Now it's time for me to eat this dry biscuit and give you pieces of why I don't like this game. Let's do it. Number 1, there are only 8 characters when they could have expanded the roster a bit more. I feel like Crow should have been an automatic addition as he's consistently in combat in the original series. They could have added characters they shunned in the series like Sun, Neptune, Team Coffee, and more. They could have brought more variety into the gameplay with all these types of fighting styles and weapons. 2, there's no real story mode. I mentioned this when I was talking about it earlier. I'm aware that it's a hack and slash game. There doesn't have to be a story mode. And you're right, there doesn't have to be. But Rwby is a story and character driven series. It would only make sense that this has a non-canonical story with in-depth characters and fun interactions between our protagonists. Also, there are hack and slash games that have a story and it can fit as it doesn't change anything about the gameplay. Persona 5 Strikers, Fire Emblem 3 Hopes, the Devil May Cry franchise. We know that it can work with a good engaging story with in-depth and memorable characterization. 3, the locations are boring. These worlds don't look bad, but they could use some more. There's nothing to do instead of go from point A to point B with nothing in between other than combat. Why can't we have missions where we have to save someone from Grimm and we get rewards from it? Why can't we explore more? The world is too linear. We could have alternate routes, collectibles, stuff that actually matter to the game. 4, the level system being limited to level 10 and only 10 skill points. Like I mentioned earlier, you don't have any stats that make the level system relevant. When you level up, you should get stronger to where you can feel yourself killing Grimm in one shot. I like the skill points and gaining skills to make yourself stronger, but it doesn't have to be the only way. Gaining stats to make things easier for going further into the game as it gets more difficult, and especially if you're on the harder difficulties. Skill points are a part of that, but if you put in those RPG elements, it will make the most sense logically and make things more interesting. I mentioned that at the end of every chapter that you could gain a skill point and go from there, and you can bring in those RPG statistics to replace getting skill points when you level up. Also, it takes forever to level up. There may be ways to get extra XP outside of battle, but those are so minimal. If one of the ways of getting XP in this game is to grab dust off a station and then you get XP for putting it on the bomb car in order to make it move, that makes me think about your priorities. 5, lack of other characters. I already talked about playable characters, but what about characters that could act as NPCs that you can talk with? They could be scattered around the locations and give you hints or stuff that could help you out in battle. Why can't I talk to Winter whenever I feel like it? 6, Dr. Merlot. This man is pushed into this game so we can have a main antagonist. We don't find out until chapter 7, and we aren't even hinted at it. Wanna know why? Because he was made for this game. He's a Grimm Eclipse original character. You would have thought that they would at least mention his name in the original series, but they never did. What's the point of having him as our main villain when we have Salem, Cinder, Neo, and others? I get it. The main theme of this game is the Grimm, but instead of having him be the only villain, why not have him working with Salem or Cinder into actually making the Grimm stronger and more of a threat? 7. Only one boss fight. Why is the final boss the only traditional boss fight? We couldn't have fought a Rwby villain at the end of every chapter? Emerald, Mercury, Arthur, Watts, Tyrion, Neo, Cinder, Salem as the final boss? They could get harder as you move forward. It would be a fun challenge. 8. The dialogue is useless. We don't need to be told what to do when we can literally figure it out right then and there. Protect the control center, defeat the waves of Grimm. Even the game tells us where to go and what to do, so we don't need the professors to give us information and we're going to figure out on our own. Speaking of, 9. Professor Port, Dr. Oobleck, and Osmond are the only other cameos that appear in this game. 3 characters who are barely even in Rwby to begin with, and they don't even mention more important characters in the series. Why? 10. This game could have been so much more. I believe that if the developers over at Rooster Teeth really took their time with this game, it could be an amazing game. I don't know what was going on behind the scenes, but this game feels rushed, and I think it's only here so they can say that there is a Rwby game. Rwby is definitely a franchise that deserves a shot in the video game scene, but this isn't the way in my opinion. I mean, they can officially say there's a Rwby video game, but it's just a massive disappointment for me because I was super excited for it when I first saw the trailer for the definitive edition. This is one of the most minimalistic games I've ever played. They put so little effort into it. It feels soulless. There's no character, no fan service, or references to the original source material other than the characters. I hate this game because I feel like Rooster Teeth just rushed this game out for the sake of having the Rwby game to brag about. 11. The enemies have way too much health for their own good. They take forever to take down, mainly the bear type Grimm, the Grimm that have those green spikes, and the final boss. Oh, did I say final boss? 12. The final boss, the most repetitive, tedious, monotonous final boss I've ever fought. This thing has way too much health, and it drags on for way too long because of the amount of health it has, and there's no real good way of making progress. When you get it down to a certain amount of HP, it starts spawning Grimm and the white robot that has the machine gun, and it doesn't matter if you kill it, they will infinitely respawn until you kill the boss. I told myself that I had to finish this in order to make this video. I did it once and it was very satisfying because it's so bad. But 13, you literally get nothing when you complete this game. Once the credits finish, you go straight back to the main menu. That's literally it. You don't get anything. No extra outfits, no customizable weapons, nothing. You don't gain a single thing after beating this game. I feel empty. I feel like I did all that for nothing because I did do all that for nothing. I finished Sonic Boom Rise of Lyric when I was 15. I'm 19 and never thought I would have to play a game that could possibly be on that game's level. 14. Loading the main menu. When I booted up this game for the very first time to play it and I got to this screen here, it took 1 minute and 2 seconds to load the main menu. What? 62 seconds of waiting. You know how long that felt? That felt like 5 hours. Yes, I'm playing the Nintendo Switch version, which is an underpowered console, but it shouldn't take this long for a game that's barely finished to not be able to load. This is the perfect game for the Switch that it could load at a decent pace. I could finish a game of Apex Legends on the Switch before this finishes loading. I could leave and go to work for 8 hours and come back before this is done loading. It reminds me of the Sonic 06 loading screens, but it's nowhere near as bad because of the sheer amount of loading screens that game forces upon you. That is unacceptable. No, I should not have to wait more than 1 minute to play a game because of a loading screen. That's it. 67 pages and I'm done. I don't like this game. In my opinion, it's a waste of a game because it doesn't mean anything in the end. I deserve the clown makeup for getting my hopes up. This doesn't change what I think about Rwby as a franchise or as a series. I still really like Rwby, and I'm gonna sit down and finally watch Volume 8. This game is unnecessary. If you want to play it and voice your own opinion, I'm not gonna stop you. You're just not gonna change mine, and that shouldn't be your goal. I played the Switch version of this game, so that kind of has to do with how the overall environment looks up close. It doesn't look that good. They barely load in, and it's the same with the character models. I don't know if it's the same on other platforms, but I really don't care. Also, these are the worst shadows I've ever seen in a game like this. You might as well not include them because you don't really need to rely on depth perception. It's not a 3D platformer. But those were my words on Rwby Grimm Eclipse. I don't like this game, and I'm gonna stand by it because I don't think they're gonna be adding anything new anytime soon. It's been 3 years since the last piece of DLC content was added. But if they do, you can rely on me not to ever play this game again.